Hello guys, what's up? I'm Mohammad Foad, back with another video of C++ tutorials. Today, we're gonna be checking out what are variables, play with them a little bit, and solve a simple question, which is how to calculate the average of two or even more numbers. So, if you are ready, stay with me. And before we get started, let me explain you a little bit about C++. Maybe you're still not familiar with C++ that much, so let me explain you. What can you do with C++ language? Well, you could make games, websites, databases, everything that you could imagine. Or even by knowing C++, you could easily learn C language, which is common in electronics, and you could just design boards and program them. Another thing that I want to tell you is that you could make money with C++. Yeah, you could make money in couple of ways. And for example, one of them is to make game and produce them, or I don't know, for example, develop a website for special market or something. And there are lots of ways to make money using C++. And another thing, which could be the most important part about C++, is that if you learn C++, all of the other languages will be really easy for you. For example, for me, I've studied C++, finished C++ like 5 months ago, and now I'm studying Python, or even now I'm fluent in C language, which is really good. So I suggest you to stay with me and learn C++ so that you could learn other programming languages as well. Okay guys, for you guys who are new to my channel, I'm using code blocks for coding. The version is 12.11, but you could also use the version 16.2 or whatever you want. Then or if you don't want to use code blocks, you could use dev C++, or if you don't want to use each of these, you could go to your favorite browser. For example, here in Google, you search for online C++ compiler. There are tons of websites where you could use them to code your program. Here, for example, in this website, if you just I use it for my C programming because it's really good. So you just for example, here you could use choose your language, then you just sign into the website and your projects are over there. For example, my projects here are these two here because I have entered it once before. So now let's get over to the code blocks. Okay guys, variables in C++ are like this. In the first part, we have the variables type, which for example could be integer, double, float, character, anything that you want, which I'm gonna explain in any second. The next part is the variable name. It doesn't matter whatever the variable name is, but don't use those keywords like for example in, cout, those things. Then you could go for its value, give a value, dedicate a value to it, and you're done. The size of the part depending on the type of the variable that you are using, is dedicated to the value that you have put in the variable, and it's in your RAM memory.
Okay, the next thing that we're gonna talk about is the variables type. Except I apologize if the quality of the picture is not that good. Here we have byte, then boolean, which its range could be true or false, or in other way 0 or 1. Then we have characters, which are mainly based on ASCII code. For example, the
ASCII codes of A, letter A, is equal to 65, because the computer just understand numbers, and it can store characters or anything inside of itself. So it's gonna change it to a number and then save that number as well. So here have characters, and the rest are not that important. We have integer, which is it's obvious what it is. Then we have float, double, just long int, and just short int are not that usable. You could use int, for example, but in when it's necessary. For example, you wanna really high range, you're gonna, for example, use uint underline 64. There are tons of them which you could use depending on your library as well. Then we have double and float. Okay, here in code blocks for defining an variable, you're gonna first define its type, as we mentioned before. For example, we're gonna go for integer, so int, then the name of the variable which you're gonna use, in this case x. Now here you could set a number or amount for it just right here by say equal to, for example, 12, then semicolon, or you could just stop here, go to the next line or wherever you want, then say x is equal to 12 semicolon, or sorry, 12, there's no important, doesn't matter. Okay, then the next thing that I'm gonna tell you is that you could, for example, play with them. For example, say 12 minus 1. Let's check out how does it work. For printing this thing, our variable, we're gonna just say out the name of the variable which we wanted to be printed. Say x, obviously, and then compile it. Here is the compiling process, by the way. Okay, as you can see, 12 minus 1 is equal to 11. Here we have 11. Good. Another thing for variable, if you want to, for example, reduce or add to them, minus or anything, multiplication, division, anything, you could use it, you could do it here. So we're gonna just delete it and define it here to show you that it works here as well. Then we say out x, for example, times 3. This star means multiplication. So 8 times 3, let's check out, 24, obviously. Okay, then another thing which I have mentioned is character, which is really usable. For defining a character, you say char or char, anything else, then it's gonna blow up here. You could use enter for this to see the result here. As you can see, the type of the variable is blue. Remember, it's blue. Okay, a name for it, for example, ch equal to, here you give it an letter, for example, a. Remember that you have to give it between these brackets. Okay, now we're gonna print it. So I'm gonna just copy this, paste it, and change its amount to ch. Let's see how does it work. So we see a and 24. Let's make it a little bit nicer. So we're gonna say ch is equal to something. We're gonna have these brackets, as you can see, and here we're gonna say x is equal to something which is here. So maybe you're wondering to see what would happen if we, for example, say ch times 2, or for example plus 3. Let's check it out. Compiling. Let's see what the result is. it gives you a number. So that shows that if you're using character, the computer changes it to the number. Okay, something else that you could do is let me delete this thing from here. And something else that you could do is to set a number for it. Maybe let's check it out. I'm not that sure. Let's experience. Just the knowledge is extract from experiencing. Let's see. Okay, here I set it a number to see what will happen. See, it works. This is the 60 is the ASCII code of this character. Or if I, for example, change it to 66, we're gonna have capital B. There we go, capital B. Another thing that could be useful is, for example, imagine that you want its integer type to be printed. So before the name of the variable which you want to print, you just want to open parentheses and close it, and between them you say the type that you want to be printed. For example, we want its integer type. Compiling it, see, 66, very useful. So let's change its amount at first and give it a letter like N, then compile it. 110. That means the ASCII code of N is 110. That way, if you are wondering what are the ASCII codes of letter or anything else, you could just use this code, or you could just simply go to Google, search for it, say ASCII code or ASCII table, go to the picture, there you go, just let it load. Come on, the internet is really slow. Okay, there we go. As you can see, you could open the website, and here you have, for example, for N, let me show you what do I mean exactly. N, its ASCII code is 110, exactly what we have done here in our code. Okay, so maybe you're wondering, what about float? Right, float, then a name for it, for example, M, semicolon, just to show you that you could give it, set the variable to a special number in lots of ways. So the float, for example, M is equal to, let's say, 123.98, semicolon. Now we're gonna print it here to see the result. Just change this thing. M is equal to something. This is gonna be M. So let's see. Delete this. Okay, here, as you can see, it's written here. One of the things that I have realized is that you could set your main to an integer as well, and here you're gonna have return 0, semicolon, which I'm gonna explain what is this thing and what is this thing in our features video. Okay, and as you can see, there is a little bit nicer, and you could press any key to close it. Nice. Okay guys, the last thing that is left is our question, which I have told you once before. Let's get into it. So for calculating some numbers average, you have to define some variables. For example, I'm gonna go for 3 variables. It depends on how many numbers you want to calculate their average, and if it's 4 you have to define 4 variables. If it's 5 you have to print
5 variables. If it's 6 you have to print 6 variables. If it's 7 you have to print 7 variables. If it's 8 you have to define 8 variables. If it's 9 you have to define 8 variables.
If it's 10 you have to define 10 variables as well. Good fun fact. Okay, the another variable that we have to is vital to have when you want to calculate some numbers average is how many numbers you're using. So I'm gonna go for, call it n and say 3 numbers, which is really obvious. Okay, for the last variable we have 2 choices. We could just simply define it here and just do our mathematics works in it, or we could just use the cout statement, then do our calculations in the cout statement, which I'm gonna do the both for you to see both of them works. Okay, here we're gonna first I'm gonna go for the first way. So int z is equal to a plus b plus c divided by n. Guys, you could use brackets if you're not sure that C++ will do the job for you, because if you don't have these parentheses here, it's gonna first divide c by n and just print their sum, which is not something we want. cout z, which is really obvious, and you have to give our variables a value, which is of course. Okay, here for example we're gonna go for 6, compiling it. Okay guys, as you can see our answer here is 4, but the fact is that the average of 2 plus 4 plus 6, well, the average is the same. Let's change it to explain what I'm trying to tell you. Okay, let me close this opening. As you can see, the answer is remain 4, which is not we want, because you know the average of these 3 is not an int, it's a float, and these 2, this one and this one, is an int type, so the compiler is gonna pick the int part, so we have to change these to float as well. This one too, same thing, float. Good, just compiling it, and as you can see we have our numbers printed in float type. Good. If you are wondering to see how we can just receive as many numbers as the person who is working with the our code wants, well, I'm gonna explain it in our features video, because it needs loops, for example while loop or for loop, which is really useful, and I'm gonna explain it in our features video. Back to you, Fuad. Thank you, Fuad, but I think you forget to explain something. Forget to explain the second way. Oh yes, you're right, I forget that. Okay guys, let's get here. Just I'm gonna explain it quickly. Here we delete the variable which we defined for printing, for calculating, and put our mathematics formula in it. So we delete it and we just go for it in the cout type. We're gonna say cout a plus b plus c divided by n, compiling it, And as you can see, the answer is the same. Okay, I've explained it, Fuad. Back to you. Thank you for your good explanation. Guys, before the ending, let me tell you something. You know, all these computers, all these programming languages, C, C++, 0 and 1, all these are tools. And the main thing that is gonna make you successful is creativity. The main reason that is gonna create something, invent something new, is your creativity. So be creative. And as always, hope you enjoy, hope you learn something, and have a nice day.